spiritual journey looks so much like a bed of roses, and it's not.
Say that, right? And they were like, man, like, like, hey man, I'm not perfect. You know, I'm still working on me to be able to be transparent. Because man, too often we like to perpetuate the perception of perfection.
You're doing good, and when you're doing for God, a lot of times what happens is that the devil throws darts in your way, and he will even sometimes trip you up to fall down, so people could look at you and be like, is that the same girl that's on the praise team singing? Is that the same guy that was playing the piano? Those type of questions arise in people's minds, especially when you're trying to do things with God. The devil tries to slip you up, but I will tell you, keep on keeping on.
Sometimes we have distorted predictions. God designed our mind to be able to process a potential outcome. That is something that other creatures don't necessarily have the ability to do. We have the ability. That is a God design. Having God's DNA in us, He gave us a fraction of who He is and His ability to see from the beginning and the end, and He allowed us to be able to project with our thoughts, what could the potential outcome be if I XYZ.
Hello, and welcome again to another episode of Zoom Hope Live. It's going to be exciting. It's really going to be informative. It's really going to be something that you need, whether you're a father, a mother, or a child, a grandfather, or a grandmother. This episode is definitely for you, as we are back with part 2, and we will be focusing on fathering faithfully. By the way, you're the one who have asked for episode 2, and it is right here on Zoom Up Live. So do this for us right now. You're watching, pause for a little bit, share the link with a friend, with your family, in your special groups, so we can get the word out. We're gonna delve deep into some discussion today as we talk about fathering faithfully. In the meantime, we want you to remember we are also on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. So we want you to go over there, please. We want you to go there, and we want you to follow us. Then, if you're watching on YouTube, you know this guy is serious. You want to make sure that you subscribe. So he said that if you do not subscribe, he's going to take over this platform. Let me see if I can see him properly. No, there you go. Please, yes, they will subscribe. So thank you. All right. So please, we do not want this guy to come and take over hosting this show. So please subscribe and share the link. Please, as we go today, we want you to post your comments as well as ask your questions. We're looking forward to hear from you. By the way, just know this, we really appreciate you being on the platform every week from one week to the other. You can do this as well. Let us know where you're watching from. If you're watching from the Bahamas, Jamaica, Canada, Kenya, Papua New Guinea, wherever, we want to know where you're tuning in from. So feel free to throw that in the comments as well. But remember, ask your questions and post your comments. Now, it's the same team. We're back. Same team of panelists. And I'll just invite everyone who are here to come on at this time. Gentlemen, it is so good to have you on Zoom Hope Live again. And to also do this collab with Fathering Faithfully, of course, which is a ministry. So for those who are not aware of what Fathering Faithfully is, you can go to fatheringfaithfully.com and I believe you can get some information there. But you're here, so why not just hear from some of those persons who have been a part of this so far? We'll start with Keen, and then we could go around. So, Keen, tell us a little bit about yourself as we enter into the discussion today.
Hey, Larry, everyone. It's good to be back with you and back with Zoom Hope Live family. It's a pleasure to be here as always. And you ask about Father and Faithfully, we'll get into that a little bit more. But as it relates to me, I'm Keen, um, pastor, chaplain, but first and foremost, husband, father, and a friend of God and friend of man.
Yeah.
Married now for the past 9 years and 8 months, and energetic boys that keep me young. So looking forward to taking care of them and doing what God has called me to do. It's really a pleasure being
Awesome.
here with you guys.
Awesome. So we have also Lewin Field, who has been here with us. It's great to have you back again,
Yeah,
Lewin.
absolutely, Larry. Thank you, Zoom Hope family. Thank you, Fathering Faithfully. This is indeed a ministry that I've come to know and love. Spearheaded by my good friend Keen. As it relates to me, Lowen Fila Lane, I am the husband of one wife, Terian, and
Yeah.
the father of an autistic 10-year-old son, Alex
Mhm.
Xavier. Terian and I, we just celebrated this week on the 17th, our 13th wedding anniversary, and I'm happy and I thank God for his leading in our lives, and
Mhm.
us being a couple and being parents to our son Alex Xavier. Pleasure to be here, and I look forward to the
Right.
discussion.
Right, right. And we're looking forward to hear a little bit about parenting Alex Xavier as well. So that should be really interesting. Let's hear from you, Carlton, who is here also.
Good afternoon, Zoom Hope Live. It is good to be back. I
Yes.
am Carlton Chambers. I am an orthopedic surgeon by profession. I have been married for uh, now 23 years.
What?
Wow.
Yes, yes. So
Awesome.
Wow.
it has been a while. Actually, 24. We just celebrated our 24th anniversary. So
Whoa. Oh,
so yes. So we have three children. Well, I say
uh-huh.
children, but as you know, they are teenagers.
Right.
One is 19, one is 17, and one is 15. Um,
Right.
and they have been a joy. It is a
Yes.
privilege to be their father. And I'm looking forward to being a part of this discussion this evening with such an awesome panel of gentlemen.
Awesome, awesome. Well, what I want you to think, everyone to think in the back of their mind, maybe how long you have been a father per se in terms of, actually a biological father. We could start there, and
Yeah.
we're gonna count up all those years and see how much experience we have with these young faces. All right, so we want to
Yeah,
count that
good
up.
good idea. Good idea.
Yes, yes, and then further on in the show, we'll give it. Maybe the orthopedic surgeon might be better at the maths, so we'll just give him the
Yeah.
numbers and he crunch it quick. All
Yeah.
right, so you're watching Zoom Up Live. We will go now for a break. And by the way, today what we're doing, we're featuring our unproduced gospel singers. So if you're out there and you can get some fire underneath them and get them rolling, come on, they're open for a contract. So we're gonna listen to Jopal Scavella, a very gifted young man who has really a gift, many gifts, but a gift vocally. So listen to him as he sings about reckless love.
spoke a word, you were singing over me. You have been so, so good to me. Before I took a breath, you breathed your life in me. You have been so, so kind to me. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Oh, it chases me down, fights till I'm found, leaves the 99. I couldn't earn it, and I don't deserve it. Still, you give yourself away. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. So, so good to me. So good, so good. And when I felt no worth, you paid it all for me. You have been so, so kind to me. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Oh, it chases me down, fights till I'm found, leaves the 99, and I couldn't earn it. I still don't deserve it. Still, you give yourself away. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. It's reckless, There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. Oh, the overwhelming,
reckless love of God. There is really no mountain he won't climb up, no darkness he won't light up. Coming after me. Well, that's something for us to rest our mind on as fathers. Now, I want to jump right into our first question. So, what is your present view of fathering, and how was this perspective developed? I'll start with you, Carlton, and then, of course, we're just having a discussion today, so we just want to keep it like that. So, Carlton, take a bite at it and get us going.
All right. So my view of fathering is that fathering is a responsibility, an opportunity to build for the future, an opportunity to touch lives, and an opportunity to partner with God in leading individuals into knowing who He is. And how I got to this view of fathering, well, as you would anticipate, a lot of how we see the world, or worldview, is influenced by the things that happen around us. And I grew up with a father who, before I can remember, my father was an elder in the church, and he worked hard. He worked to ensure that his family was provided for. He worked hard so that we would get to know God. And growing up, I didn't think about the challenges that come with that. But having now gotten to the point where I now have my own children, there is I don't know what happens at that point, but there is a light, or there's a switch that goes off when you now recognize that you are responsible for somebody else's life, and you take a totally different approach to a lot of things. I remember as a youngster, I used to speed down the road. I used to drive very fast. And sometimes I'm still tempted to do that. But once I had children and there were other persons involved, then suddenly, I'm a lot more careful about how I do things. I do believe that it is our responsibility to prepare our children for the future. Now, how we go about doing that, there is no real manual that gives you a step-by-step guideline as to how you should approach every single problem that comes up. And so we're going to find that we're going to make mistakes. There are going to be times when we do something and we look back at it and you say, something, I should have done that differently. But this perspective was developed having interacted with my own father, and then getting to the point where I also developed my own relationship with God. And as I look to God and I call God my father, somewhere along the line, it hit me that if I am calling God Father, then what I look at and see in God, it is something that those who call me Father are supposed to look at and see in me. And I tell you that when I got to that,
that's like a hit.
Then I realized how awesome this responsibility that I've been given is.
Elton, I just wanna underscore some of the things that you pointed out, because when you're on the outside looking in, things look a whole lot differently, right? It looks a whole lot differently. And one of the things for me is I have much respect and appreciation for folks who take on this particular kind of a role. Being a son to a father, You know, I've looked at my father and how he, you know, would have raised me and my siblings. But having become a father myself, I now understand the challenges that he would have faced, because there's
Right.
no script to this role, right? There's no script. And you could have had 20 or 30 children. Fathering each child is going to be different, right? There is no cookie
Different.
cutter kind of an approach. And I have the awesome privilege, and I say that privilege, to be the father of an autistic son, which, you know, just think about it, layering on top of what I've just shared with you. So
Yes.
being a dad is already challenging and unscripted.
Right.
Being a dad of of a special needs child is
Yeah.
even the more challenging. And one of the things
Mhm.
too, it has helped me to shape my focus on this particular role, right?
Yeah.
It's not an easy role. It carries an awesome responsibility, knowing that you are part of this building process, right? Because whatever comes after is gonna be as a direct result of how we handle this role and this particular responsibility, right? So
Correct.
we have a hand in shaping whatever the future looks like, and to me that is definitely, you know, an awesome responsibility.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. Yes.
and and so I agree with Dr. Chambers, totally. I would dovetail in on Lowen as he talk about the future, because I see my role as father, as one who's really having a hand in deciding, very much so, what the future will look like. And so it's a God-given responsibility that I have to represent God, as Dr. Chambers said earlier. I'm representing the King of Kings, the Lord of Lords, the good Father. And quite frankly, it's the toughest job that I have come to love. And what I say, um, I've served, several churches, and 6 churches board chair, and I've
Mhm.
gone home after a long day's work feeling very accomplished. And if something goes wrong, I can just make it right some other time, and possibly just divorce myself from it if
Right.
people choose to, maybe, stay in their ways. But for this job as a father, which my 2 boys, I've been fathering
Mhm.
now collective of 8.5 years. So that Doc has that number for me already. 8.5 years. It's the toughest job, because I am so invested. I realize that somebody's salvation is pretty
Yeah.
much up to me, at,
Yeah.
until they are, responsible for themselves, of course. And so that's how I see it. It's a challenging job because of what is expected. However, I have the opportunity to learn from God, and this is where, um, I think fathering faithfully comes in, because it's not just being a good father. You provide things that they might need, but being an exceptional father representing God. That's where the rubber hits the road for me, and that's where
Mhm.
I want to spend my time. We have several good fathers, but we lack exceptional
Yeah.
fathers. And so
Yeah.
my perspective, you know, takes in observing, several others before I became a father, of course, and saying, boy, never, never, never. And then when I became a father, I'm like, okay, now I see why some fathers can possibly slight their responsibility,
Yeah.
or even, you know, behave in a certain way, because I'm now in the role and see that it requires commitment, it requires
Yeah.
dedication, it requires a constant care, it requires being
Yeah.
that gentle giant, the
Yeah.
compassionate one. And
Yeah.
so it was developed from, as I say, observing others, and pretty much my experience with my father, several things I
Right.
learned from him, and I'm hoping to build on that.
Yes, yes. And I really appreciate the foundations that you have laid, and also the appreciation that you have for, seeing other persons within the role. Like Doc might say, well, I've seen my daddy. You said you have seen your daddy, or other persons. And actually, now when you get into it, you commit yourself to it to the point of deep reflection, Dr. Chambers, where he said, I call God Father. And I realize that this same name is been called, to me, I've been called that same name by other personalities, my children. So that makes it even more dynamic, and say, it's an awesome responsibility. I don't want to run away from what I am seeing going on in the chat, even though this is not normally the section that will break there. Because Colin sparked something and I saw a response, and I want to look at it. First, he make this point. Well, secondly, make this point, and then I'm going to go to his first question. He said, we all had an idea of how we would father our children until we become fathers ourselves.
Yeah.
Right? So that's a comment he made after a question. And this was his question. Does fathering comes naturally? Are we born with fathering skills, or do we have to learn how to be a father? And then Linda Gibson answered, and I want us to interact a little bit on this.
Yes.
All of what I've just said. Said, okay, Colin Major, it is also a learned behavior. When dads depend on God, they became the best dads there are, and can be a powerful force for many positives. With all of those, and I know our engineer Spence will, have them rolling across the screen. Alan, take us. What's your perspective from these reflections that we're getting from our audience?
Yeah, I agree with Colin wholeheartedly in terms of, the ideas that we had before becoming fathers, and it's so different, right? It's like night and day. To the question though about it coming naturally, I think maternal instincts are much more potent than those of the fathers. That's just my personal perspective. But the person who gave the response, Linda, hit the nail on the head, because I appreciate the resources that I had around me that helped to prepare me for this particular role, because majority of us as fathers, we are products of the resources and the environment that we have around us. So we have to be very, very careful and cautious about that, right? So the church has a good foundation, a good template in terms of setting expectations, being that spiritual head, being the one that will coordinate the activities within the family, and ultimately being that responsible person. And as Dr. Carlton said earlier, around God being father, us being called father as well. And I'm happy that I became a part of the church before becoming a father, because that would have been probably something that's totally different. But the point is that we have to make this a commitment, right? It's much more, and I don't want to say it's much more of a commitment, but help me with the words. As a mother, it's difficult for a mother to separate herself from her child than a father is. So the commitment that's required from a father is gonna be significant, and that's why I find, because men on a whole have it so easy in running away. The first thing you can do is to say it's not my child. That's the first thing they can say, and then we get into this whole DNA and whatever the case may be. Always looking to opt out. Men on a whole too find it sometimes a lot more difficult to stick to
challenging situations, which is why the commitment is important. The commitment to be a dad is important, and understanding too that you have to forgive yourself if you err in some way, shape, or form, because nobody is sitting with a book and a pencil and grading you. Oh, you did this right, you did this wrong. You have to take it a little bit easy on yourself, or it's gonna be, the role is gonna become overwhelming. So to answer Colin's question, a little of it comes naturally, but a lot of it comes too from the environment, the resources, and the folks that you have around you that will help to shape you into the person that that you'll be.
And just before you go, Carlton, and this is really important, because and for many times, I think maybe about 3 times you talk about how easy it is for a mother to stay around or to be invested, as opposed to the father. And I was really listening to that, because quite a bit of research are currently out there that has proven that where fathers have that stake in the parents, they're invested in being committed fathers, being around, giving warmth, etc. in the home. Those children are more likely to be successful in life in the areas when you think about it. They are more likely to be dedicated to Christ, thinking about Christianity. They are more likely to be successful individuals. They are more likely to understand their purpose in life because of the paternal figure within the home. And don't mind, with the negativity that is out there when you think about patriarchal living. I know the negative press it might cause us to stray away from one to say, the fathers are very important in the home, and when the fathers are not there, things are likely not to be how they ought to be. I think this guy by the name of Daniel Block, he said, all right, so seeing that you are fighting against this idea of the patriarchal thing, he said patricentrism, where the center of the family is around the father, as the father makes sure that everyone are included and receive that warmth and love. So the father must, Alan, father must be intentional to say, guess what? I am going to take this on. I am going to do it. I am going to be the leader in the home, in infusing love. Something that, perhaps it might not be what everyone say that a father should be, but I am going to give love, because based on what I know God to be, he's a loving God. Go ahead, Carlton.
Okay, so that's an interesting question that Colin raised. And what I want to say is that the desire to procreate comes naturally.
Yes.
God, when he created Adam and Eve, he said, be fruitful and multiply. Okay.
That is true.
Now recognize that there are individuals who will do all kinds of things to prevent procreation while enjoying themselves in the act of intercourse.
That's right.
Because for whatever reason they may feel, okay, this is not the right time. I don't want to get tied down with this individual or whatever. But the desire to procreate, to leave that legacy, to leave your gene pool, that actually comes naturally. Now, the other aspect of it, which is the fathering part, okay, has a lot to do with the expectations of society and different groups that we may find ourselves in. And so if it is that it is acceptable among my group of peers when I was growing up as a teenager and the people I hang out with, if I grew up without a father, and it is acceptable among my group of individuals to just deposit my genetics, my genes, and then
Yeah.
run off. And then somewhere down the road, I can get up and say, boy, you know, I have 20 children.
Yeah.
I may not have seen any of 20 of them in my lifetime. I'm just aware of them. But I can proudly say I have 20 children because that is accepted within my circle. Then for those individuals, they may feel as if they're successful fathers. Whereas if I am a part of a group or when I say society, I'm talking about different size groups. It may be the nation. It may be just my own circle of friends. It may be being a part of the church. But the expectations will come from certain societal norms, culturally. So it may be that within my group, being a good father means working and providing and making sure that there's food on the table, but having no interaction with my children. Whereas I may have been socialized, and when I say I may have been socialized this way, it may not necessarily be the experience that I have had, but it may also be the experience that I desired. Yes. So I may have grown up in a situation where I thought that what a good father is someone who is invested in the child, who will take time to speak with the child, someone who will guide and share the experiences. I may not even have had that as an individual, but growing up, that was what I desired. And therefore I decided when I become a father, this is what I am going to do. Yeah. So fathering is learned from that aspect, not only by the experiences we have, but also from the experiences we lack, but we would have desired.
Yeah. You know what is coming to my mind as you're thinking, as you're speaking now, Carlton, is the idea of individuality and community, right? So when we come from an individualistic model, we can find ourselves straying and not being proper fathers. Where we have the instinct, as you said, to have children. So we have just that might be individual, just trying to supply something that I like or a desire. Or I might shy away from it to say, guess what? I don't want to take on no responsibility to care for anyone. That's individualistic. But when you look at the community model already set in place certain things that ought to be there when it comes on to being a father. So a father should adopt those community models as a part of the system to say, well, as a father, I must be present. As a father, I must have warmth. As a father, I must show myself to be someone who can be spoken to, as someone who is listening. As a father, I want to make it know that I am someone that will do my best to pull from the resources around me to provide. So these are all community models. But when we move away from that, when we move away from the community model that the Lord set out, and we become individualistic now, we're going to say, you know what, just have some children, they're around, doesn't really matter, but I'm a father. But yeah, so I appreciate the fact that you're saying it's learned, and it's learned
Larry,
from the community model that is there. Go ahead, Keen.
So you're saying you reached to a point where you decide to follow the dictates of your own heart, then, right? And that's why the enemy is trying so much to erode the family structure. So, to the question, Colin, does it come naturally? I believe it does. I really believe it does. However, because of sin, it has eroded the ability to step into that purpose and to fulfill it, right? And so we see where the enemy has just messed up the family structure to the point where the father And society now, in some way, sees the father as almost non-existent in several areas, right? Which is why you see Mother's Day is more prominent, because more individuals have come to understand and appreciate that their mothers vested in them as opposed to the father. And so if it is that as men, we're taught and encouraged to be fathers, to develop those skills, just like how a little girl is almost naturally inclined, we say, to take care of a doll, a boy goat. But truth be told, at some point, when that boy is small, he has a loving relationship and wants to take care of that doll as well. Now he grows up to maybe shoot catapult and do other things, while the young lady, I don't want to say sadly, but the only one who's encouraged by her family to continue to take care of stuff. So when the little boy decides now, hey, I don't want to play quote unquote dolly house thing that is involved in-house with you, as parents, we perpetuate that, right? And encourage them to go outside and play football, while we allow and encourage the young ladies to stay inside and make the house. And so all these behaviors are learned, as the panelists have said who have gone before. Society dictates with it. And I'm not encouraging folks to go and buy dolls for their boys now. No, but encourage them to be involved in the touch their clothes, right? Do the dishes, make the bed, to do that consider female oriented then, and by so doing, the young boy will learn that when he becomes a father, it's okay to help his wife. Hello, somebody. And I can testify that if you really want to have your wife being happy, help around the house and you will have more time together. So the point is, does fathering come naturally? Yes, but society has told us otherwise, and that's why the devil wants to rob us of the community which you talk about, Larry, that will encourage us and point us to the Bible. Some words were said. I think the only one that were missing were prayerful and playful, right? As fathering faithfully, we believe a faithful father will epitomize these four things. He'll be present, not run away. You don't just deposit your gene pool somewhere and run away. You'll be present. You'll be purposeful, which means you'll get your marching orders from God, the good father, who will be able to tell you how to love your children and take care of them. You'll be prayerful, recognizing that you need to hear from him to give you directions on a daily basis. And you'll also be playful, which a lot of fathers play around with their children, but spending that time intentional, because children, their main work is playing. And through play, they develop and learn how to interact with the wider community.
Yeah, let me pull from this, and maybe Alan, you could pull out the block with this one, right? What kind of support? I know we have intimated, and been going around and that, but what kind of support? What kind of male support? Let me put it that way. Do you have directly or indirectly as a father? As a father, no. What kind of male support, or perhaps maybe support wherever, do you have as a father? And what recommendation do you have for providing support for others? I think these questions are very important for us to consider, more than just, it's good to talk, but what kind of support you have?
Thanks, Larry. And I'll be very candid. Not a lot, which is why I embrace and I appreciate my friend Keen for starting a ministry like this, where we, as individuals, we're not experts. The two qualifications that we have is that we're fathers, yes, and that we are Christians. We, you know,
Yes.
we allow ourselves to be led by God, and that's why Fathering Faithfully is a ministry that I wholeheartedly endorse. But unfortunately, that sense of community among men, among fathers, is a little lacking, especially on the positive side, right? There may be things on the negative side. So folks will gather and they have a drink and they'll boast about how many kids they have and whatever the case may be. But in terms of positive influences, that I find to be quite lacking. And what I see happening, which probably has happened, you know, throughout the ages, is you look to your peers or those who have children that are of similar ages, and you know you kind of stumble across things together, right? You know, you share information. Oh, look what, and then you know the person can probably give you advice. But I think there is opportunity for us to have a more structured approach, understanding that each child is different and understanding that the way one fathers his or her his children is going to be different. There are some principles that we can establish, right? And then use those principles as we father our kids. So my recommendation is, and as I found this in my own experience, is I have become a mentor to folks who are having children. I mean, you know, men who are having children, and becoming a role model as well to others. So where I saw the deficit and the lack, I am trying to see how I can fill that gap by becoming to that next generation or whomever else to have them kind of exposed in that particular area. The other thing that I find that we probably need to do, and what I've done in my own experience, is to consume information, right? I mean, I read a lot, and that sort of that's sort of
I'm happy to hear that. Yes, that's a powerful point right there.
Yes,
reading, consuming information. Go ahead.
And make sure at a minimum 30 minutes per day I am reading some material. And the material that I'm reading, a lot of times, yes, it's around leadership, being a better leader and so on. But I want to learn how I can become a better husband, or I can become a better father, because I am not an expert at all. So you have to ensure that you do these kind of things that will help you to shape the person that you are becoming, because you are not an expert. I shared you real quick. When my wife was pregnant with our son, I read, I just going to say a little bit more than her, right? Because I was so interested and intrigued by this whole pregnancy thing, Carlton and Keen, that you know, I signed up to all of the apps. I put in the dates and they tell you where and what's supposed to happen. And then I start to check off, and I said, dear, they say according to the book, this should be happening now. What's going on? Are you experiencing these things? And she said, yes. And then she would say, but how you know? But I say, I read, that's what it says according to the book. You have to be invested in the experience, because a lot of women, and Keen said it earlier, unfortunately, the community and the expectations that have been set of us and for us are not the correct kind of expectations. We're told that, you know, boy, a woman thing that you know need to be involved in. No, there's no woman thing. It's called parenting, and I want to be a part of every experience. If I could have participated in the carrying of the child, Larry, I would have done.
Yes.
I would have. Is the investment? Yes, Keen.
I don't want to push it by saying I almost had some of the sickness for my wife, but
Of course, yes.
being invested is so important. And I was able to, interesting, Lauren, as you mentioned that, I was able to help my wife to decide when we go to the doctor, especially for my second son, to say, hey, your contractions, the timing between them, I knew that, hey, it was time for us to be headed to the doctor. And while I was there, and I interacted with the nurse who was relating to her, I was able to say some things to them. I thought it my responsibility to say something so that they know that I know what to expect of them.
Yeah.
And so you talk about reading and key. I'm going this one, parenting by the Spirit. Gentlemen, you've said it earlier so many times. We don't have a manual.
No.
We don't have a manual, but that does not mean that we should not, try to find the information, because it's there. And so what type I'm going to answer, what type of support do I have? I do have a mentor. I have a mentor, and this is, I'm kind of answering the question, not necessarily backwards, but what kind of recommendation do I have? Seek a mentor. There might be individuals who you admire, how they do what they do, right? And that's what I did. I asked, I took the phone up and I said, hey, I appreciate you. Will you be able to help me to be like you? I used to say it frivolously, and Larry knows that, from NTU, we say, hey, I want to be like you when I grow up. And I realized that my saying that frivolously sometimes, it didn't carry a lot of weight. But when I became a father, I realized that I need help. And because the unity was not the ladies bond and they have juice together and stuff and they chit chat like that. Guys, we don't really do that to discuss issues that we're facing. And so I had to get on the phone and ask for help, and that's what I do. So I have one gentleman who I can call on as a mentor relating to fathering, and there's a group of guys who I can relate to. Jason is one who we have children in similar age group and I can run things by, but it's not a lot. And that's one of the reasons, gentlemen, that the Lord has just replaced this on my heart, to create a community of thriving fathers, godly men who want to transmit a godly legacy. I think we can do that through fathering faithfully, so we can change how we're socialized. So ladies, and to say this quickly, ladies, they have showers, right? For ladies, when they're getting you're going to bridal shower, right? Mm-hmm. You have baby shower, because ladies are saying, hey, we want to help you to be the best wife, we want to be the best mother. What about for the guys? Bachelor party, and what is seemingly done at the bachelor party. I'm saying we need to change that. And this is one of the efforts that we're putting forward to say, hey, you know a guy who's going to have a child, who's going to get married. We want to support him in a godly way. Yes. Offer him a book. Give him a gift of a man after God's own heart. The ladies get showered with gifts, but we can give the gift of a book. It is really so important. I can't drive home this anymore. Read, and I do understand that there are limitations. Do I not know that personally? There are limitations, and if you're not able to read, ask questions, gentlemen. There's no excuse. So what support do I have? A small group, and we're hoping that Fathering Faithfully can be that resource that you tap into to be able to learn some of those skills that God wants you to develop. He placed them in you, but they've been latent.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. So, Carlton, you have anything on this one?
Well, I'm gonna try to be brief. My answer to the first part of the question is not much, but I'm not sure if that was because it was not available or it was my failure to recognize the need for it. And I say that because there are persons out there who are willing to lend support if we are willing to ask for it, especially in a community such as the church. There are individuals that are willing to lend support, but I don't know that I was mature enough to recognize my need and therefore to seek that support. Okay. Now, having said that, in terms of the recommendations, I do believe that men's ministry is a weak area in our church, and I do applaud Keen and the guys for the ministry that they have developed in Fathering Faithfully. And I think that we need more groups like that. There is a group of young men, and I say young, that are around, and I know that if I want to bounce something off them, I could easily pick up the phone and I could say, hey, what do you think about so and so? And one of those brothers, just last year sometime, he said, look, he believed that as men we should get together, play some dominoes, include especially our boys, and so that we can interact with them and talk with them. Okay. Unfortunately, just about the time that idea came up, the pandemic started and social distancing and all of that. So that never came to fruition. But I do believe that gathering as men, whereas in the past it has been, let us go, play some ball, or, let us go, we don't drink, but there are guys who go out and have a drink. We have to get to the point where we can now get together in a similar manner for a positive result as it relates to how we impact the lives of our children and the brothers that we are sharing with, how we impact the lives of their children as well.
Yes.
But Larry, if you allow me just a sec, because
go ahead, run along, Louis.
Yeah, Carlton make a very good point. So men like to physically interact because just look at the talk time. The pandemic hasn't so much affected the females as I know it has, but they are always used to talking to each other and probably spending time on the phone and so on. They're not too keen on spending time on the phone after two sentences, then we kind of get blank. So we need to find creative means outside of the physical space to connect as a community of men. I really appreciate that point, that you've made, Carlton, and it's something that we ought to look at. Even though, relative to where we are as this pandemic seems to be deepening and be taking on a different shape. I thought we were coming out of the pandemic, and now, I'm here in Jamaica and not looking too good at all. So we need to find some creative ways.
And let me tell you, I see an argument going on in the chat about language learning, right?
Yes.
And I just read a book. By the way, please share your book, the books that you have read, so that we can share it. I just read this book, Inside the Transformative World of Children's Ministry, and even to talk about children's ministry, the author, what's his name again? Kyle Taylor, Kyle Taylor, was really advancing the idea that, when you talk about children leaders, it's volunteers, it's pastors, it's parents, it's those who are involved in it. And he brings out the idea that, language learning is important in that when we speak, we have to make sure, or when we relate to the children, we have to make sure that they understand it. How do they understand that language? It is through modeling.
Yes.
It is through modeling. It's not just saying things over their head. And for many of us to get there, we need a community. There's a certain there's a certain level of the trial and error when you become a parent, but we do not have a large window for that. So having a community where you can bounce
time either.
you can learn, what do you think about this? What do you think about, I am thinking about doing this with my children. I'm thinking about dealing with this situation. What do you think? What have you done? So that by the time you're now applying it with your children, you're not damaging that window of awe. Because social scientists would have that you're talking about from conception maybe to 4. That's a delicate window, and what is transmitted within that is very important. Sometimes you go up to maybe 12 thereabout with another window, but after that it's hard. It's hard, and that's why it says it's easier to get a child to say, man, I love Jesus, than to get an adult to say, I love Jesus.
Yes.
So within that window, as fathers, we need to make sure that we pull from as much resources that we have, so that when we are fathering, it's not trial and error. There might be a little bit of that, but we are doing it intentionally. We're doing it with knowledge that has been transmitted to us.
Yeah, I want to introduce a quick concept.
It's important that you mentioned that.
All right, Alan, Lowen, then Keen.
Thank you. Yeah, I want to introduce a quick concept here, what I call the say-do ratio, right? The say-do ratio. How does what we do measure up against what we say? And a lot of times there's a huge disparity in that say-do ratio, because children are more inclined to hear what you do more so than what you say. Right, so we ought to look at that and see, how do we become the models of the things that we would want our children to be right. Practicing, and you have to be consistent about it in how you lead your life. You can't try to be one person in front of your child, but then you're somebody else elsewhere. It's gonna become too difficult. It's gonna become too arduous of a task. So you have to become that person that you want the child to model, rather than putting on an act, because they will see right through that. That's the point I wanted.
Right. And we see quite a bit of person actually bringing out that same point within the chat. I thought I came across that a little bit, but modeling is very important. I'm not sure if Spence can find that, but he might find it untrue. But modeling is important. Not just say it, but actually do it as you speak. So let me hear what you have to say, and then there's something on my mind I want to add.
Yeah, I just wanted to support the idea. I mean, Lowen talked about the say-do ratio and the technical term for it, but I've encouraged my son to do his devotions, and he asks me over and over, Dad, why? And I'll give him the answer, that kind of not simplistic, but a simple one. Why do you eat? He says, to grow. And I said, that's why we do a devotion, to grow spiritual. But I think nothing happens, or it doesn't come home to him so much as when I sit with him. So I say, do your devotions, and I sit with him. I sit across from the table and do mine, so that he can see. And even at two, I'm trying to help my little son, 2.5. He knows when he sees me, he sees me, I'm kneeling down and I'm praying, and he comes to me and he says, Dad, reading your Bible. And I'm trying to say, hey, when I'm doing that, I invite him in to listen to what I'm reading, or to me in that posture, because trust me, I know you can talk till the cows come home if you're not doing it, gentlemen. And I've heard people say, and society say, do as I say but not as I do. It's so wrong, and it's really disastrous. It's a very wrong way of trying to help children grow. So you're telling them, don't smoke, but yet still you're smoking. You tell your son or your daughter, your children, don't drink, you are drinking. It really does not work. What you do carries so much more weight, and that's why the responsibility is so enormous, because a man must live. So I don't remember who said it, but a man must live so that the world knows that he's a Christian, but more so you're free. Because we can go to church and we can preach a good sermon, we can be good elders, we can be good professionals, but when we step through the doors, I mean, who steps in? Is that a monster or a man? Is who steps in? Is that somebody who represents God? You can have a fight going to church, and then you come out and it's happy Sabbath, everybody, but you are just abusing your family. And so when the child grows up, then they look at just checking out on God, who you go to church to only the one day, and then you check out on them, because the other 22 hours of the day, they know you might spend 2 hours at church, but the other 22 hours, they know it's going to be fear and trepidation from you as an individual. So it's so important for us to live it, and that's my point. Live it, gentlemen. It's so easy to say, but living it.
Right. So listen what I hope I get the pronunciation right. Sir Keitha said, the life you live, fathers, is what your children is what your children see. They remember only some of what is said. So be careful what you do. That's loaded, and it's important for us to wrap our mind around that. So now I'm gonna put the next discussion point on the screen. Well, Spence gonna do that, right? But while you look at this discussion point, I want you to listen this question and respond with this. Should a father be what is the model that you recommend? To be authoritative or an authoritarian when it comes on to father? And look at this question. Carlton, take us out with this one, please.
Okay, so I'm gonna start with the question you voiced first about being authoritative or authoritarian. There are different circumstances and at different points in our lives where both may be appropriate. There are some things that are important enough that when the other party does not get it as yet, it is important enough to be an authoritarian in those circumstances. For example, if your child is running to the road, to the busy road, and your car is passing up and down, that is not time to stop and have a discussion. That is time to be an authoritarian.
Yes.
But in order to help them to now develop the concept, and as they grow older, to understand what that is all about, to understand that, hey, because there is danger in the road, I don't need to be running to the road. At that point, it requires you to be authoritative, because now you can have a discussion, you can guide, you can show. But at the point of danger, or when something is seriously going to go wrong, you may need to act as an authoritarian. Now, let me head to the question. Several fathers indulge their children and term it love. How can we hold our children accountable and still demonstrate love? The first thing is to understand what love is. Because 1 Corinthians chapter 13 gives us a pretty good idea of what love is.
Right.
Okay? And love always seeks what is best for the individual. That is love. It's not what is expedient right now, what is convenient at the moment, but what is best for the individual. And therefore, if it is that I am looking out for the best interest of my children, then how much I give to them, how much I restrain myself from giving to them, considering what I may conceive as being best. Mind you, we don't always get it right when we think we're doing what is best. We don't always get it right. But in love, the motive is seeking what is best. If the child has a need, a material need, and I feel that, okay, you know what, I'm going to hold back on this material need because if I give it, the child may think I'm indulging them. That's not love, because they may have a need at the moment, and what they need may be in their best interest to give it to them. Now, holding your children accountable is to help them to understand that actions have consequences. And when I say actions have consequences, I'm not just talking about their own actions. I'm talking about the actions of the parents as well.
Okay.
So for example, if my child,
that's important there. Yeah.
If my child is asking me for something material, my child wants some brand name clothes, okay? Mm-hmm. And they're very expensive and I have a limited budget. If I can get my child to understand, if we buy this brand name clothes, there'll be no food in the house for the next week.
Yeah.
Accountability, meaning that they understand that actions have consequences. My actions have consequences. Your actions have consequences.
Right.
You now have to decide whether or not you can live with those consequences. I tell you something. When my children were young, okay, Devin learned very early about consequences. And it's amazing because he could reason things out. And that I have to give credit to Rhonda for teaching him that.
Right.
I remember once he asked for something and she took him step by step through the process to say, okay, if you get this thing, what do you think is going to happen? And he thought about it, and after going about 7 or 8 steps, he finally said, Mommy, I don't want it anymore because if I get it, this is what is going to happen.
Wow.
That's
authoritative.
we have to teach them. Yes. Actions have consequences. So if this happens, this is what is going to follow.
Yeah.
And
right there.
Go ahead, Larry. Go ahead.
Hold your point. Because right there, right, she knows exactly what she wants to do, which is not to give it to him, but she actually brings him into the conversation there. That's powerful. Go ahead.
Absolutely. And the most important thing, okay, for our children to understand at the end of the day is that sin has consequences. A relationship with God has a different set of consequences, because we look at consequences as being something bad, you know, but it's not always bad. It is what comes as a result of what has happened before. And so sin, the consequence, the natural history of sin is that it leads to death. The natural history of a relationship with God is that it leads to life. And I pause right there.
Yeah, you know, I wanna pick up Carlton around, because you talk about consequences, right? And in my view, as parents, as dads, we need to set the expectations, clearly articulate the expectations of our children to our children, and helping them to understand if there are to be breaches, then there are going to be certain consequences. Yes, you talk about sin and original sin. If you eat the fruit, then you shall surely die. You understand? There is always an if then. So you lay out the expectations, and then the consequences will come in. As dads, though, we need to ensure that whenever there are breaches, that the consequences are carried out. That's when you in Jamaican terms, they say you spoil the child, because you allow them to get away with things. You can't do that. You have to ensure that you set the expectations, explain the consequences, you carry them out if there are any kind of breaches. So they can't come back and say you're being a bad father because you've already set these expectations. You know the if then statement, and if you're reaping the then you should not have done the if. That's how we ought to father. The other point I wanted to make is there is also a flip side, Larry, where in Jamaica as well, sometimes women set us up as fathers to be the disciplinarian in the family. So you wait until your father come home, and when your father hears whatever the case may be, that's not a good approach at all, because this kind of scare tactic that you play with the child, and it affects
Come on now.
the relationship that the child has with the father. I suffered from that, a little bit. I love my mother dearly, but she wasn't one to execute discipline, most times at all. That was left up to my father, and that didn't work too well for me, because it didn't frame the right expectation. It didn't set the right example that I would have wanted. But then I understood too that came out, that was a product of, we talked about community earlier, and expectations and the roles that we expect of our dads. We need to have that evolve
right,
to the point where we ensure that as fathers, we are setting the right kind of expectations. Our wives are setting the right kind of expectations with our children as well, because they have to support. Let me say spouses, or spouses have to support us as well in that particular role, because we can't do it in and of ourselves. Fathering, yes, is a role that we are called to play as men, but our spouses,
as Carlton said, yes,
in that regard, right? Setting the right kind of expectations with the child, and don't set me up, right? Because you're going to tell me, you need to, and so on, so happen, and your father, and then I need to be the one to know that sets the right kind of
and
go ahead, Larry.
Yeah, because as you're talking, right, what we have to understand, right? Discipline or disciplining a child,
yes,
it should, while it might be something that the child might not want, the child at all times should see love, warmth within the disciplinary action that has been taking place. And, so it might means that, guess what? It's going to have to be some proper reasoning and understanding, as was said earlier, the consequences. So we're executing you not watching the TV. For example, I share this. This is my children. They love this new game called Roadblock. And, I used to give them quite a little time to play Roadblock, till I realized that if I asked them to do some things, it was not being carried out. So I said, okay, fine, we're gonna roll back Roadblock, and and this is the reason, because if we allow this to control you, you will lose your mind, and you will not be able to be as creative as you were. Think about, these are some ways you've been creative. Bam, 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 and we talk about that. Then I roadblock. I roll it back, and they only get to do it once a week.
Absolutely.
Right? And so that ended up being, a pretty long consequence, and I don't see how it's going to roll back to where it was. But they're living with that.
Yes.
And while they're living with that, they're actually using the consequence in place to actually grow themselves. So they're saying, guess what? Normally I would do roadblock. And I hope I'm really calling it right. I used to do it all these time, but now I can't do it. So I'm going to do something else. So they're getting the opportunity to actually grow from the consequence. So even if the parent want to say, well, or the mother want to say, well, the father is the one is going to execute this consequence.
Yes.
It's not, as you say, a scare tactic to say, when your daddy come, he's going to do something. I'm not really into it, but when he do it, you're going to be in problem, right?
Yep.
No, it's a part of what we're doing to make sure that you grow to what we started out with, to your best self.
Absolutely.
You can continue if someone else want to.
So
on a final point before I throw it to my other panelists, right? The other thing is, reality sometimes is the best form of discipline. What do I mean by that? Carlton, you spoke about the example of the child running in the street. That's an extreme, but sometimes the child may be so hard-headed in wanting to do something that you allow them to do it. Because you know as the father that there is going to be some particular consequences. You've shared with them what the consequence is going to be, but they still choose to do it. Reality sometimes can help you to discipline them, right? And then that's where the love comes in, right? You're not gonna be badgering the child to say, I told you so, but they will look at it and they'll rate you more, as we say in Jamaican terms, as a father, to say, daddy did really and truly say this particular thing. So sometimes our teachable moments will come from reality, and you have to weigh the consequences, weigh the severity, that's the word I'll use, the severity sometimes of the actions of the child, to allow them to err, so that they can learn from those errors. Because sometimes we try to protect the child a little bit too much, to the point where they stop being explorative, but allow them the latitude sometimes where the reality itself will become the discipline.
I follow you.
So let me just go ahead quickly as it relates to parenting and disciplining. One of the book that I'm reading, Parenting by the Spirit, one of the most profound it's that Sally, we can't use devil's and expect Christ-like results. We cannot use the devil's method and expect Christ-like results. And so you want to indulge your child and give them everything and expect them to be able to look to you as a responsible person. Absolutely not. They will disregard you. And I've heard several children saying, hey, I appreciated X-parent more because they did not give me X. They did not allow me to do Y. And so where you thought you were winning as a parent, you end up losing in the long run, because just allow them to do anything, to have free reign, and then you realize the natural consequences of that is their danger. And that's where God comes in being such a loving God that he knocks at the heart door and he says, hey, I want to come in. I want to enjoy a relationship with you. And so what I'm understanding, and for those who are not Seventh-day Adventists, if you read Mrs. Ellen G. White, she has amazing insights in biblical matters. But she mentioned that, and I agree, that really when sinners get the natural results of their consequences, it's out of love that God allows them. They will not be happy in heaven. And I'm just
Yes,
saying
right.
sinners broadly, because for somebody who chooses a life of just, recklessness and frivolity, you cannot enjoy holiness. And so allowing you to go that path, it's out of love. And that's one of the things we have to do as parents. We've done your part. See your children as little human beings, not as insignificant, but and it comes on to our view of them too. I wanted to make a point about authoritarian and authoritative, but I'll just mention this: how we see our children decide will dictate how we parent them, and so see them as human beings, small human beings. And so when you treat them with respect and give them the opportunity to learn, because you can. At 6 year old, I'm telling my son, hey, if you go to the store, if we get X, we'll not be able to. I think somebody made that point earlier. We'll not be able to do something. He said to me, Daddy, I need a shoes this week. He's like, I need a shoes. I'm like, yeah, we just have to wait a bit. I can't just go in the store and take out one. I was able to do that. So talk with them. They understand more than we think they do. Our children understand more than we think they do. All right.
All right. Thank you. All right. So let's bring it home. We time has gone, right? Honestly. But that's why what I've said before we come live is important. This is a dialogue that we have to continue. It's more than just saying part 1 and part 2. It's really a dialogue, that we really have to allow to be a part of this platform. So can you share your personal story? Just please. And of course, no, we're out of time already, but please share your personal story. Let's start with Keen, Carlton, and then Alan.
Yes, I'll go first, seeing as I'm fathering for the shortest time in comparison to the other two.
Give your
gentlemen.
years.
My story about
8.5
about fathering. Pardon me?
What's
Yes.
your year? What's the year?
And I did say 8.5, but putting
That's
the
wrong.
two halves together, it's 9. It's 9. So
your son is 9.
It's 9. Yeah, 9 years. Yeah, combined 9 years of parenting. Because
No, fix that, man. Your older son is not 9.
And 6.5.
Is adding the two.
No, man.
Don't add them. One. Just give us the one. The oldest son.
All right, so it's 6.5. 6.5.
6. All right.
Hey, as a matter of fact, it's 6. It's 6 years and 8 months. Like, don't push it. You're like give me the exact date now.
All right, go ahead, Steve.
So, my story, I've come to see that 2 children, 2 different way of parenting that required of me, and that's something that I didn't know before. I really thought, hey, I could do this well with one and it should naturally fall in place for the other. No. So I've seen the difference between both children, and I can appreciate that, their individuality. I've come to be able to focus on who they are as individuals, as opposed to try to expect the same behavior from both of them. As it relates to being a father, I've realized that something that I was told before, really not true. Children sleep most of the day. Not my first son. It wasn't until 1 year and 4 months after he was born that he slept throughout the night for the first time. I can never forget that. And so, it's a matter of I've come to appreciate them, who they are individually, parent them accordingly, and appreciate them for who they are. And that's how I've been able to, in the interest of time, that's how I'll cut it short on who I've been and how I've been parenting. And it has been the most rewarding job to hear my child to me come to me when they need something, be able to express their desires, and to be able to teach them to talk, to teach them to pray. It has been a rewarding experience for me. That's my short thing for now.
Right. No, we go Chambers before Alan. So
okay, so I was married for 4.5 years before our first child came. We had a lot of time together, and once he came, he changed everything. he changed. He came into a family.
Oh yeah.
He had our ways of doing things, but his expectations, when I say his expectations, as in the demands that he made as a baby, changed a lot of things. And we started out with, he would wake up in the night. I would get up, I would pick him up, I would give him to Rhonda. She'd be in bed. She would feed him, and she would give him back to me. And then I would walk him, burp him, and walk him until he fell asleep. And sometimes it would take 2 hours of, walking with him until he fell asleep. And I would have to take him to a different room so that it would not disturb her sleep. Because I recognize that each one of us, that the two of us, we were partners working together to achieve something, and that something is a child who knows that he is loved and who grows up to meet his full potential. Yeah. And my personal story is that there is no one size fits all. I have 3 children and they all have different personalities. I remember going out to church one afternoon, and we still had one child at the time, and he was crying because he wanted to sleep. But I was keeping him awake. That was my intent, to keep him awake. And I remember one of the ladies at church said, "Why don't you let him sleep?" And I said, "No, I need to keep him awake now so that tonight he will sleep." So
is that someone else testify?
So there are different experiences. And then I remember when Jermaine came along, Devin was heading to 2 years. My children are about 2 years apart, and he was heading to 2 years. And I remember when Jermaine came along, Devin was okay after we spoke about it, because he was still young, but he understood. He was okay giving up his mother's attention because he now understood that somebody younger is there who needs to be breastfed. Yes, but he wasn't too happy about giving up his father's attention. Yeah. You can have my mother, but you're not having my father. It took him a while to understand that he would not be loved any less if his brother was loved. And then Davia came along, and she was the girl. And they both loved her and doted on her. My role in all of that was to ensure that they all knew that they were loved and taken care of, because that's what God does. That their interests were taken care of. They don't have to worry about certain things because there's somebody else taking care of that. And as they mature and they can now handle certain situations, over time, they are given more and more responsibility because they can demonstrate that, okay, I can handle a little more responsibility. Wow. So I have grown. And I tell you, there's a lot that I don't know. I don't think that sometimes I look at a very successful father, because there are certain things that I look at and say, if I had the chance to do it, I would do it differently. But the truth is that the proof of the pudding is in the tasting.
Mhm.
And now that they are at the age where they can make decisions for themselves, I can look at them and say, even though there are things I think I would have done differently, right now, the way that they approach life, I'm not so sure that I got it all wrong.
Right.
Because guess what? I can't even save myself. Only Jesus can do that.
Yes.
Why do I think that I can save my children? That is also the work of Christ. And when I get to understand that, I am supposed to demonstrate the love of God to them, then I can say, okay, as a father, I'm doing what I'm supposed to do.
Awesome. You know, I heard Keen say it earlier. He says it's the hardest job that he has come to love. And I like it, Keen, and I'm gonna be borrowing that one. But the way I would put it is that this is the second most scary position that I hold, the first being that of a husband. This is the second most scary position that I hold. Before becoming a father, before becoming a husband, I was really commitment phobic. I don't know if there's a term for that, but that's what I'll use for now. I was absolutely scared of any kind of commitment, which entering into these roles, first being a husband and then being a father. And I heard Carlton speak about 4.5 years. I lift my hat to you, my friend, because I do think that it's important, and I'm talking to the viewers here now on the platform, to set that kind of foundation before you introduce children into the relationship. Because if you don't do that, then you find that the parenting becomes a lot more difficult, because you don't understand each other as spouses. Worse, now a child comes into the mix, you don't understand that other human being came as well. So that's just a recipe for chaos. A lot of persons have navigated through it, but I personally don't think that's the most ideal. So having that kind of foundation is important, and that's something my wife and I chose to do as well. In the early stages, it was a challenge because my wife is a little scared of babies. I don't know how you say this, and so she was scared of holding a small child. Other people's children. She would first. She would have never been the first in line to go hold a newborn baby. The first thing she questioned is probably how old is the child. The closer the child is to probably about a year, then she would probably take the child. But worse now, she's gonna be placed into this position of holding this child that is just hours old, days old, and so on. So I had to step in now because my wife also had a C-section. So a lot of responsibility was placed on me in the early stages of the bathing and those sort of things, and that helped to build a kind of bond. And I was excited by it. So wherever there was luck, I readily jumped in, and I was happy to play that kind of a role. But the biggest challenge for me, being scared of being a dad, was one thing, and you'd have heard me earlier in the broadcast. Being a father to a special needs child, especially for a condition that is still, persons are still learning about this condition. There is so much ignorance and lack of awareness around the condition that is called autism. And before I became the father of an autistic child, I'm not even sure that I heard the term. I'll be very, very honest with you guys. I'm not even sure if I had heard the term. And to know that it's not even like, it's so prescriptive that once the child is X, then you do Y, to learn that it's now a spectrum makes life even that much harder. And it's been a journey for me. It's been a journey for my wife as well, as we partner through this. And I've learned many things. The first one is commitment. I'm committed to this task as a dad, right? That's first and foremost. Commitment phobia is certainly out of the door when it comes on to this particular role. The next thing is resilience. Keen, you talk about 1 hour and 4 months, sleeping through the night. I had to be driving around Alex Xavier in order for him to fall asleep at night. And then, when when he ultimately falls asleep, if he gets just half an hour, that is good enough for another 24 hours. So you can, and this went a lot longer than a year and 4 months, right? So he's officially an insomniac. Even to this day, sometime I only get by on about probably 3 or 2.5 hours worth of rest. I've learned patience. I've learned to reframe, a lot of the things, because my son, he communicates differently. Let me put it that way. So if you're not exposed to children that are of the condition, then you won't understand the communication strategies that they use. So for example, what might look like a tantrum is really a meltdown in the case of an autistic child, because different kind of stimulus will trigger them. So too much light, too much sound, too many colors, all of these things have significant impact on them, and sometimes it's just them screaming out and carrying on for you to understand that something is really off. And onlooker may be saying that, boy, what a rude picnic, and you can't discipline your child, and whatever the case may be. I've come into a lot of that in my 10 years being father to Alex Xavier. And then the final one that I'll share is adaptability. Becoming a parent, and I'm not sure if we touched a lot on this, you would have had your goals as an individual before you took on this role as a father. But you'll have to learn to adapt. Know that you have this kind of responsibility. And I'll use the word adapt because you don't want to blame, because you are the one that went out and got yourself into this kind of a role. So you have a responsibility. So you have to learn to adapt. And I thank God for my son, Alex Xavier. I thank God for the support that I received from my wife as well, so that we can, be working together through this as a family. That's my story, Larry.
Awesome. I really want Spence to keep all of us on screen as we end today. So folks, you're seeing us. This actually us. this is us, right? How many? What's your years, Linfield? 10. All right, so 6.5, 10. Carlton, you did not give your years.
I think it's
19.
19.
I said that. Yes.
Oh, you did. Okay,
you didn't give yours, Larry.
I don't remember. Oh, yes. I am 8 years old. I am 8 years old. Honestly, as a father, I am feeling fulfilled as a result of this discussion here today. Being more emboldened to, when I was growing up, and person would ask me what I want to be, I always, along with the fact I would say I want to become a youth mentor, a biblical archaeologist. Of course, those things still have a little bit of everything, those stuff, right? But I always said I want to be a loving father, a loving husband, and a dedicated father. Always. From the time my wife met me and she asked me, those two were always a part of it. Getting the opportunity to begin to live out those in my life, it has been an experience, a journey that, I'm just grateful to God for, being with me and my wife in this process. From, as all of you have shared, beginning that first process of nurturing in the nights, allowing your child to sleep on you, maybe getting up, making a hot bottle, and decide, well, you're not going to use the microwave, but you're going to use the pot, and just wake up to smell something, right? Right? It shows that it's a process that God can help you to be effective at, and even where you fail, He can use that to become a strength. That has been my journey, and having 3 children, all are different, 2 girls, 1 boy, all 2 years apart. It's something that I'll say this to every father out there, is that if you are doing this as a lone ranger, stop. Tap into communities of influence that the Lord has placed in your sphere, so that you remember, you cannot save yourself, much less to save those whom God has placed in your hands. But I'm telling you, the Lord has placed each and every one of us here in a community where we will not fail. We're a part of a system to succeed. And tap into that. Tap into that. We're going to come back again with Fathering Faithfully and Zoom Hope Live. Maybe this man cave, Zoom Hope Live, men cave. And men cave is not where we say it's only men here, because there are women out there who's also contributing. And Spence, what's your years? Let's see.
14.
So all right. So Spence is 14 years. All right. So this is what you have gotten here. Maybe if we ask Colin and we ask some of the others who have contributed.
In the chat,
so many years. But we're going to give you the numbers that we have here along with Colin years. So we asked Colin to give his years. And this is what we offer. Can you imagine? Do you have the number?
So far we're at 57.
57 without Colin. All right, 57 without Colin. You know what? 38. So 57 and 38. That's how much now?
That's 95.
95 years. You know what that means? For you to be an effective father, every generation must be a part of it.
Yes.
Every generation,
absolutely.
from the alpha babies that we're having now, or maybe they call them the COVID generation, from the baby to the oldest grandparent must be a part of fathering process. So thank you so much for really tapping into what we have to offer from Zoom Hope Live and Fathering Faithfully. And we pray that this week you'll be intentional about going about it. Whether you're a mother who's trying to help the father of your children to step up to the pace or to continue, please do so by sharing this link. Do so by subscribing, ringing the notification bell, because it's all about infusing hope into your context and making sure that we build lives. We're going to come back and we'll come back together. And Louisville, we're going to want you to come back just to talk a little bit more about special needs.
Yes.
Go over to zoomhopelive.org and explore our website, and also fatheringfaithfully.com. Please follow us on our major platform, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and subscribe. We told you that we're featuring the upcoming artists. They are more than upcoming. They're just not released. They're just not released as yet. So please, if you know anyone that can sign them up as you subscribe to our channel, please, we want you to spread their name. You have heard from Jopal. Now you'll hear from Aniska Taylor Tanis, who will tell us about the goodness of God. Thank you for making it Zoom Hope Live. On behalf of Spence, our engineer, I am Larry, and of course, this beautiful, awesome panelist. Have a beautiful week.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I love you, Lord, for your mercy
mercy never failed. All my days I've been held in your hands. From the moment that I wake up until I lay down, oh, I will sing of the goodness of God. 'Cause all my life you have been faithful. 'Cause all my life you have been so good. With every breath that I am able, oh, I will sing of the goodness of God. I love your voice. You have led me through the fire. In darkest nights, you are close like no other. I've known you as a father. I've known you as a friend. And I have lived in the goodness of God. 'Cause all my life you have been faithful. And all my life you have been so good. With every breath that I am able, oh, I will sing of the goodness of God. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. Your goodness keep running after, it's running after me. With my life laid down, I surrender now. I give you everything. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. Your goodness is running after, it's running after, yeah. All my life you have been faithful. And all my life you have been so good. With every breath that I am able, oh, I will sing of the goodness